Have you ever wondered what really sparks a massive cultural shift? How does a society just suddenly erupt with a renaissance or an enlightenment? It almost feels like magic, like a spontaneous burst of genius. But what if it's not magic at all? What if there's a hidden engine, a predictable pattern behind it all? Well, today we're going to pop the hood and take a look at that engine.
So, here's the central mystery we're tackling. What is the actual mechanism that powers these incredible moments of cultural explosion? We're going to dig into a really fascinating theory that says it's not about a lonely genius, locked away in a study. Nope, it's something way more dynamic, way more connected.
So let's just ask the big question right out of the gate. Where does something like the Italian Renaissance actually come from? I mean, the story we all get is that a few brilliant guys rediscovered the past and boom, changed the world. But that simple little story, it misses the most important part.
Okay, so check this out. A theorist named Yuri Lotman came along and said, look, these cultural explosions are not sudden sparks. They're the end result of a long, intense, and often really messy conversation between different cultures. For him, the very act of thinking is a kind of translation. You're taking an idea from one place and trying to understand it in another. And the engine that drives that whole process, it's dialogue.
So if dialogue is the engine, how does it actually work? Well, Lotman said that for any real, productive dialogue to even happen, whether it's just between two people or two entire civilizations, there have to be a few key rules in play.
The first big rule is that any real dialogue needs two things. First, something he called asymmetry, which is just a fancy way of saying the two sides have to be different. They got to bring something new to the table. And second, you need invariancy, which just means they also have to have some common ground, some shared language or belief so they can actually understand each other.
And this just nails the balance you need. Think about it. If two cultures are too similar, the conversation is pointless. It's like talking to yourself in the mirror. You don't learn anything new. But if they're too different, a conversation is impossible. It's like talking to a brick wall. The magic, the creative spark, happens right in that sweet spot in between. Now, to explain this idea, Lotman used this really beautiful and powerful example. The relationship between a mother and her newborn baby. I mean, think about it. They've just stopped being a single being, but they're not totally separate yet. They're in the perfect spot for dialogue. Different, but still deeply, deeply connected.
And when you actually watch them, you see all the rules of dialogue in their purest form. The need to communicate is there before any words even exist. Each one tries to speak the other's language. The mother babbles and makes faces, and the baby tries to imitate her. They take turns. One transmits, the other receives. And what's at the very heart of it all? A mutual attraction, a love that drives the entire conversation.
This exchange, this language of smiles, is basically the blueprint for every creative dialogue that follows. It's a conversation that's totally honest, because the need to connect and understand is so pure. And here's the mind-blowing part. Lotman says this exact same dynamic is what happens on the scale of entire civilizations.
So let's take that core idea and see how it builds into this huge 5-stage cycle. We're scaling up now, from a mother and her child to entire cultures. But as you're about to see, that fundamental rhythm of sending and receiving, it stays exactly the same.
So in this cycle, a culture is always playing one of two roles. It's either a receiver, which means it's just soaking up texts and ideas from the outside world like a sponge, or it's a transmitter, broadcasting its own brand new ideas out to everyone else. And here's the crucial insight. What we often look back on as a period of cultural decline is actually a super important time of reception.
Okay, here's how the cycle works. Stage 1 is intake. A culture starts grabbing foreign texts, thinking they're a little weird, but also kind of better. Then you hit stage 2, restructure. Translations and imitations are everywhere. The foreign and the local start to blend. Stage 3 is reinterpretation. The culture starts to make those imported ideas its own. And that leads to stage 4, transformation, where all that imported stuff gets completely melted down into something new and totally original. And finally, stage 5, transmission. The culture becomes a new center of gravity, and it just floods the world with its new texts, with even more energy than it took in.
Now, this 5-stage model isn't just some abstract theory. It's a blueprint that you can lay right over some of the biggest moments in history, and it fits perfectly. Let's look at a couple of incredible examples.
First up, the big one, Renaissance Italy. We think of it as the ultimate transmitter of culture, right? But to understand why that explosion happened, we have to first see Italy as a massive receiver. For centuries, Italy was basically a cultural crossroads, just getting hammered by a chaotic flood of different ideas. I mean, it was soaking up poetry from France, science from the Arab world, philosophy and religion from the Byzantine Empire, and all of this was landing on its own deep classical Roman soil. This period that might look like a messy decline was actually that crucial receiving stage.
And what was the result of all that soaking and absorbing? An absolute explosion of cultural energy, the likes of which the world had never seen. After centuries of being a receiver, Italy flipped a switch. It went into transmission mode, and the Renaissance was born.
Lotman's metaphor for this is just perfect. He says Italy became a cultural volcano. It just erupted, spewing out this incredible diversity of art, science, philosophy, and politics that completely flooded the rest of Europe. You can really call the Renaissance and the Baroque periods the Italian period of history. But this pattern isn't just a one-off thing. The very same cycle played out again a few centuries later with Enlightenment France, another one of those moments we think of as a huge peak of cultural creation.
Yep, before France became the center of the Enlightenment, it was in receiver mode. It was absorbing Reformation ideas from its neighbors, the new scientific empiricism from England, Bacon and Locke, Newton's physics, Italian humanism, and art from the Spanish and Italian Baroque. It was taking in all these different threads.
And then it transformed all of it. France became the great transmitter, and it made all of Europe speak its language, the language of reason, of nature, of the rights of man. Paris became the undisputed capital of European thought. Every other culture basically had to define itself by either agreeing with or arguing against French ideas.
So, when you zoom out from these examples, this whole model reveals something really profound. Not just about history, but about the nature of culture itself. It's not a static thing. It's a living, breathing system.
I absolutely love this quote from Lotman. He describes the cultural world, what he calls the Semiosphere, as something that seethes like the sun. New centers of activity just boil up and radiate this immense energy outwards. It's not a quiet library. It's this dynamic, supercharged star.
And that right there is the ultimate point. Culture doesn't evolve in a vacuum. It's not a monologue. It's not just a collection of old stuff in a museum. It is a constant, energetic, and transformative conversation between different ways of seeing the world. A period of quiet reception is just the deep breath a culture takes before the powerful roar of creation.
And this leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. I mean, look at our world right now, with this insane global flow of information. Who are the great receivers today? Which cultures are quietly absorbing this flood of diverse, conflicting ideas? And if this model holds true, what kind of cultural explosion is coming next?